Hello, I'm Merely Rosine Beasley, and I've been doing a series of YouTube videos for my website, and these are things that I'm emphasizing, activities for children, and now that so many people are at home, there are things about cooking maybe and gardening. And so today I'm going to build on what I did yesterday. Yesterday I took a pumpkin that was left from the fall, I cut it open, and I got the pulp out. And these are some of the seeds that I got out yesterday. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to lightly salt these. I put a little bit of butter on here. I think that'll help with having it not stick. I've preheated the oven to about, I don't know, probably it needed to be around 250 to 300. So anyway, I've preheated the oven. So we're going to put that in there, and I'll check them in a few minutes. All right, so something else I'm going to show is we once in a while do something called Hobo burgers. Now, in my opinion, that's kind of a tradition for, I guess, Girl Scouts. I don't know if the young men do it or not, but anyway, Hobo burgers is kind of a tradition. So I'm going to do kind of a variety and show that. So first of all, I've gone ahead and pre-made some patties. I'm going to put a little bit of, I happen to like pepper quite a bit, just a tiny bit of salt. I'm not going to worry about it too much. Now I'm going to do this. I've gone ahead and I've cut some things ahead of time because I wanted to be able to show several things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Hobo burger and I'll put a little tiny bit of salt. I really like pepper, so I'm going to put a little bit of pepper. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of potato, and I sliced it pretty thin. You don't have to worry about being too exact. I sliced some onion because I like onion cooked, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of salt, pepper, and onion, and I'll put a little more salt, a little more pepper, and then to top it off, I'm going to put a nice big glob of cream of mushroom soup. And so then what I'm going to do, now if I were doing this out at the campfire, I would put this inside of, or on top of a campfire, which I actually can do this outside, but today, this is just a concept and I'm gonna show you about it. So I'm going ahead and wrapping this in foil, and I'm gonna do a second one. It's quick, and so I'll do this one more, so you get the general idea. Okay, a little bit of salt, pepper, a little bit of sliced onion. I'm going to pull that apart. A little bit of potato. Now, sometimes when my kids were growing up, I used to do something that was similar to this, only what I would do instead of doing this individually, I would take a pot or a casserole dish, and I would make little individual patties, put a glob of mushroom soup, and if I had some carrots, I'd put those on there too. This is really good with carrots. But today I'm just going to do it this way. And so I'm going to wrap that up loosely, and I'm going to put these two in the oven and just leave them for a while, probably about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. So anyway, I'll put that here, and then later on I'll open them, and they'll probably be very delicious. Okay, now another thing that I'm gonna do that's pretty quick is I'm gonna make a meatloaf. And a lot of people make meatloaf. Now, the one I'm gonna do today is I'm going to what I'm gonna do is, since I had my meat over here, I'm just gonna take this and I'm going to add some salt and pepper. Just a moment, I'm going to be sure this is Okay, I'm gonna put some salt and pepper, and go from there. I'm looking for my pepper right here, and so I'm gonna do pepper and some salt, and then I'm going to take some cut up onion, a little bit of cut up onion, and I'm gonna put I've chopped up some potatoes, and I'm gonna put some, these are some Heinz tomato ketchup. I'm gonna cut those open because I have those. I'm gonna put some, there's plenty of potato here, whatever I need to do to get some potato, some little bits of potato, a little bit of onion, and we'll go from there. And so then some of this ketchup. Now, one of the things I really do like to add to a meatloaf is I'm very fond of an onion soup mix that you can get at all kinds of places like Kroger. I don't have one of those today, so I'm going to use what I have, which is I'm going to put in some oatmeal. I like oatmeal, and I'm going to go ahead and I have an egg. It's probably better. The egg helps bind it a little bit better. The egg is a protein. So what I'm going to do, I happen to have a leftover egg from a project. I was working on doing some eggs. So I'm going to stir that up. I'm going to add some salt, a little bit, and some pepper, and I'm going to see about maybe getting some more ketchup packets that, I figure why not? Go ahead and keep, using whatever I already have and use that up as much as possible. And then I'm going to put some oatmeal. I happen to like oatmeal. Now I have some crackers here. Some people like to use saltine crackers, so I'm going to take some crackers because I don't want these to get go stale, get old and stale. So I'm just going to go ahead, it might have another little bit of flavor to it. So that's what I'm going to do, is take this that I already stirred up, and this is just kind of showing you kind of the basics. Now, I went ahead and I have a meatloaf pan, and I have these really convenient Reynolds wrap things, and I think I may have gotten them actually at Dollar Tree, but I'm sure they sell them at Kroger, HEB, all the different grocery stores. So what I'm going to do, now I probably ordinarily would use a bigger bowl, but since I already have this one kind of messed up, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that this has got some onion, I'm going to I have some ground, smaller pieces of onion right here, so I'm going to sprinkle a little bit there. Then I'm going to take this, sort of squish it so it gets mixed up. Then I'm going to bring it over here, kind of squish it some more, and do whatever I can to, now I think it needs a little bit more meat. So what I'm going to do is I have more meat. So now most of the time somebody would probably, when they start out, they would be a little more exact. Now since I have been cooking and baking for a very long time, I'm just going to kind of look at when I think it's enough and just go from there. And I have more onion, I have a little more potato, and I certainly have more oatmeal if I decide I need more oatmeal. So now I'm going to take this, add a little more salt, add a little more pepper, and some of these onions that are here already chopped up. And you want to chop them pretty finely, because otherwise if you don't, then when you eat the oatmeal, it's going to seem like you're going to taste some chunks, and I don't think that's really where you want to be. And so anyway, I'm going to look and see if I have any more of these ketchup. I have a little more ketchup. I'm going to squeeze a little more out of each packet. I do actually have some ketchup in the refrigerator, so probably what I'll do is I'll put a little bit of ketchup on the top, cover it a little bit, and that way that moisture will stay while it's baking. So now I have Now it's kind of ooey gooey, and kids love ooey gooey. So if you have your children helping you with this, they would probably love doing all of this ooey gooey stuff. I mean, I don't mind because I know that eventually it's going to taste really great. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to squish it up a little bit, and then put a little more, some more potatoes maybe in where inside, and it's whatever that I want. I'm going to put a little more oatmeal, and I'm just going to, as long as the consistency is kind of what I want, then I'm just going, now you could be more exact with the recipe, and I'm not going to be that concerned, because it's one of these things that I think as long as you have enough moisture for it to bake, because that's what you're doing, is you're baking, you're letting the heat do the work. So you're baking this meat, and I think it's pretty great the way it is. I'm gonna cover it. I'm gonna put a little more salt and pepper just to make sure there's some flavor here, and I'll put a little bit, maybe a little bit of ketchup. Maybe I could even do it later on. Okay, so now I have this. I'm gonna make it a little bit more like a loaf. I can actually form it the way I want. And now I think I'm ready to put this in the oven, and I'm gonna have it bake for about 30 to 45 minutes, and I'll check it in a little bit. So anyway, I'm gonna put it down there, and I'll check it in a little bit. Okay, so that's some things that just to share with you. So now we have Hobo burgers in the oven. We have some pumpkin seeds in the oven, and we have meatloaf in the oven. All right, now the next thing I want to talk about is something that I think is very important, and it has to do with emergency preparedness. Now, I've been a nurse since 1991. I've lived in Jersey Village, where I live, for 40 years. And I've seen plenty of storms, plenty of hurricanes, and so forth. I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and where I grew up, some of the concern, not in Tulsa so much, but nearby, were tornadoes. Now with tornadoes, you don't get a lot of warning. With hurricanes, we get quite a 2 or 3 days of warning, so everybody can get ready. A few months ago, it seemed like there was a storm brewing. So what I did is I took a carton, and what I did is I filled this with water, and I put it in the freezer, and I let it become ice. And so if there were a calamity of some sort, I was going to be ready to go, and this was easy. I know that when I was talking to one of my cousins who grew up on the coast in Florida, on the East Coast, and they had quite a few storms come their way, and so they would just fill up containers. They didn't rush out to the store to buy water. They just went around and filled up containers. So what I want to encourage everybody to do is to think about this. I think it's important to save a few of these. You can fill them up with water, and then they can become ice. I think it's important to save wonderful containers like this. Then what you can do is you can fill these up, and if you don't want to drink the water, because sometimes I'm concerned about the water in Jersey Village, I don't think it's as clean as it used to be. I don't think the water in Houston is as clean as it used to be when I first moved here 40 years ago. The thing is this water can always be water that you can maybe bathe in. You never know. Maybe you can bathe the dog. Maybe you can bathe yourself. Maybe you can wash a few clothes. The other thing I remember we used to do years ago is we would fill up our bathtubs with water before a storm. So these are things that you can do, and I think that everybody should still consider doing it. Now, on my website, many, many months ago, when I ran for city council, I developed a flyer, Emergency Preparedness. And I talk about keeping gas in your car and making sure that you are thinking about water, food, and shelter, and have copies of your important papers, and keep cash on hand and first aid supplies. And there's many other things. These are tips. These are not things that I necessarily thought of by myself. I have lived through, in Jersey Village, we've had 4 major storms. Now, when I was a nursing instructor at Harris Health, it just so happened that I was in Malaysia when all that Katrina drama was happening, and I didn't even know this was happening. So when I got back to the United States, I went to bed, got up the next morning, and discovered there was this huge storm that was Katrina. And so anyway, since then, I've lived through this myself. So I want to make sure that everybody is aware that these are things that I personally recommend that you buy, and you don't have to buy them all right away. I had an emergency bag in my car with a lot of these, not everything, many of these things. Since then, I've added another section that says to reassure your children. My husband was visiting in Alaska. I wasn't able to go with him because of health problems. And in Alaska, they're concerned about earthquakes. And a magazine that he had that was printed by the U.S. government talked about reassure your children. It says, don't lie to them, don't be anxious, just say something positive like, you don't have to worry, we or someone we trust, will be looking after you. So that's something that I want you to consider. Now this particular flyer is on my website. My website is the website that when I ran for city council, it's that website. So I want you to consider looking at it. Maybe you could start buying some of the items on there. Now, one other thing I want to a couple other things before I finish for today with this video is, here's a product. I live on the lake in Jersey Village, and I don't want to use things that I consider are hazardous chemicals. A friend of mine mentioned that if I had problems with ants, that I could get something called essential oils, and they were from orange peels. So this is something you might consider. I haven't had a lot of trouble with ants since then, so I didn't end up needing it after all. Another thing I want to mention is this, beans. Now, I have a bag of chickpeas, also known as garbanzo beans. And these are items that when people make hummus, that's what they're using. So I'm going to, later on today, I'm going to consider soaking these in a pan with a lot of water. It takes several hours to do this. It's simple, and this is something you might consider is occasionally buying a bag of garbanzo beans, and then you could have your own chickpeas. Maybe you might make some hummus. Maybe you might put some of these into a soup. I don't know. But there's lots of products out there that are not very expensive, and they're easy to buy and easy to get a hold of and utilize. So anyway, these are just some tips for today. I will be checking in a little while my pumpkin seeds and so forth. Anyway, thank you for joining me today. I trust that some of these tips will help you have fun this week with your children while you're at home. Thank you.